and brachot, we're going to be learning about the traveler's prayer, the prayer that we're supposed to say when we travel, which is
Oh,
good time, which is good timing for you guys and for anybody else who has
yep.
some trips planned. Rosemary, are you up north?
I am.
It's good to see you after we missed you the last couple of weeks. So you look good. You look like you're fresh and ready to go.
Absolutely.
Judith read in your place, but we missed you. And nonetheless, she did a very admirable job, but we missed you. So it's good to have you back. And yeah, it's been pretty quiet actually around the temple area. We had our open house last week. Last weekend, Sunday, whatever. It was nice. And yeah, everything went pretty smoothly there. But yeah, we're still just kind of making our way through the summer, and there are a lot of people traveling. We got a bunch of people this week are dropping their kids off at college. It's college, going to college week. Are you seeing some of that on the road, Mike?
Oh, yeah. When we were in Illinois, we're not too far from a university, and there were tons of people dropping their kids off.
Yeah, it's really wild. Watching.
Right.
So why are we having?
What? Sorry.
Why is there services Friday night?
Because we have what are you complaining about? You love services.
I'm happy we'll be there.
I know. No, it's we have the Levines have their daughter's bat mitzvah, Julia's bat mitzvah, and look, we don't force people to have a Shabbat Friday night before their bat mitzvah. Some people want to, and some people want to be with family, and we're not telling people what to do, but they wanted to do a Shabbat, so Rick and Addie are doing a bonus Shabbat. That might happen during the year. It might happen. It's still kind of a work in progress how we're running bar and bat mitzvahs now, but kind of back to the way things were before, I think, a little bit.
I would love to see Shabbat every week.
I know. So we're figuring out what that would look like and how we could budget that and do other stuff. But yeah, anyways.
Well, I can sing for free.
That
Thank you.
that would not be good.
No, Mary chimed in with that, but no, everything's we're moving through the summer and letting more people. It's great to see everybody here today. We got a lot of people online, not so many people in person right now because like I said, it's summertime, but it's nice to see people online. Welcome everybody. We're letting everybody in.
Today is Tu B'Av.
So yesterday was Tu B'Av. So yesterday it started so it started Sunday night, and today is the day after Tu B'Av. So Tu B'Av, I saw a lot more, by the way, this year stuff for Tu B'Av. I got a lot of emails about Tu B'Av. I don't know, it's because of October 7th and people are talked more about Tisha B'Av this year too. But all of a sudden, I got so many emails from Jewish organizations on Tu B'Av. I'm not assuming everybody else did, because I get emails from every Jewish organization in Israel and America, even some in Europe and other places, but a lot of stuff with Tu B'Av. And I remember about 25 years ago. Yeah, probably about maybe even 30 years. No, about 25 years ago. I remember my dad found out about Tu B'Av. Somebody told him about it, and he got real into it. And he wanted it to be a holiday that people brought back because it's Jewish Valentine's Day. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. We're just starting. No. Oh, geez, we didn't. Sorry. No, we're stretching it out. John, no, you got here just in time. Reverend Lynn and John, they were stuck outside. The Tu B'Av was yesterday, the 15th of the month of Av. And right here, stand right there. So Tu B'Av is Tet Vav B'Av. It's the 15th of Av. It's a week after Tisha B'Av. So Tisha B'Av is the destruction of the temple. Tu B'Av is, the Talmud doesn't say much about it, but it says it's a day of love. It's according to tradition, it's like Jewish Valentine's Day. And as I was just saying, I saw more stuff about Tu B'Av this year than I've ever seen. It just keeps growing and growing. But it's it used to not be talked about hardly. I mean, when as a kid, I never heard anybody talk about Tu B'Av. Here's the Wikipedia piece on Tu B'Av. So it was yesterday. In modern Israel, it's celebrated as a holiday of love, an auspicious day for weddings. Again, Tu B'Av is Tet Vav. It's the 15th. And it says, according to the Mishnah, Tu B'Av was a joyous holiday in the days of the temple, marking the beginning of the grape harvest. And this is an interesting thing that the Mishnah says. On Yom Kippur and Tu B'Av, the unmarried girls of Jerusalem dressed in white garments and went out to dance in the vineyard. The Talmud states that there were no holy days as happy for Jews as Tu B'Av and Yom Kippur.
That's
Weird,
weird.
right? We don't think of Yom Kippur as a big happy day,
Yeah.
but it was also a dating day. And so it was considered to be a time when people would see women in their white garments and they fell in love. Though I will tell you that Yom Kippur, while we don't consider it a happy day anymore, Yom Kippur is a day where oftentimes people see each other at synagogue. They maybe haven't seen each other. I think in the old days, sometimes people hadn't seen each other for, a few years. Maybe somebody came back from college and saw somebody that they knew back when they were kids. And I bet you there were a few people that fell in love on Yom Kippur, but that's what the Mishnah says. I mean, it's not like it's actually says that that's what it is. So again, there's some commentary about why that is. Some of it goes back to the incidents of the daughters of Zelophehad, that happened on the 15th of Av, that they were allowed to inherit their father's stuff, which is kind of an interesting midrash, if you will. There's another midrash that at the end of Israel's wandering in the wilderness, the last remnant of the generation of the sin of spies, which had been forbidden from entering the promised land, found that they were not destined to die. For 40 years, every Tisha B'Av, the Israelites made graves for themselves, right? So, and sure enough, every year for 40 years, 2.5% of the male population didn't get out of their grave, right? It was kind of spooky. But it says that year, the 15,000 who remained from the first generation went to sleep in graves and woke up the next day to their surprise. Thinking they made a mistake with the date, they kept sleeping in their graves until they reached Tu B'Av, saw a full moon, and then they knew they were going to enter the land. So there's a little midrash that some of the last 2.5% got spared. It's an interesting little midrash too. The tribe of Benjamin were allowed to intermarry with other tribes after the incident of Gibeah, the story in Judges chapter 9. These are all, I don't go through all, but these last ones actually might be the most important, which is that the nights, traditionally the ideal time for Torah study, are lengthened again after the summer solstice, permitting more study. So that might have a little bit to do with the astronomy. That could be it. It's the full moon, right? And there's another one. The Roman occupiers permitted burial of the victims after the massacre of Beitar during the Bar Kokhba revolt in 135 Common Era. Miraculously, the bodies had not decomposed despite exposures to the elements for over a year. That sounds like almost like one of those Christian saints.
Yeah, sounds like something from King Arthur.
Yep.
Can I ask you a sidebar?
Yes.
I
yes.
just wanted to know, Sarah was writing something yesterday. What is the first archaeology evidence of the Jews as a people? Is it the Egyptian stele, or is there
Well,
something
we don't
else?
know for sure.
Yeah.
As far as outside confirmation of the Israelites, that's one possibility. They called the Merneptah stele, which was from like the 1500 BC time. And there's another possibility that if that's not really talking about Israel, the Israelites in Canaan, that the next outside verification is for sure the Mesha stele that was found in Jordan, that talks about the kings of Israel and Judah That's from about the 8th century BCE, and that's 100%. That's without question. But
Oh, okay. How about the steel of? Isn't there a steel in Dan, or is that the one?
yes, and that's from the 800s too. That's from around the same period, the Tel Dan steel. But I mean, people make the argument that's Israelite, though. I mean, it's dated. I mean, like you could say that they kind of made up something, but I mean, it's not made up. But yeah, but that's not outside, right? That's us talking about ourselves. If we're talking about other people talking about ourselves,
Uh-huh.
about us, not us talking about ourselves, then you have to go to the Egyptians and maybe the again the Ammonites, Moabites talking about us.
Okay, and there was one other question. I had this
Yeah,
memory.
because we don't know. I mean, it's a good question. It's a good
Well,
question,
at least
Gail.
it didn't have an empty. It didn't have an easy answer.
No, I mean, that's the reality. So anyways, so Tu B'Av. And what's interesting about Tu B'Av this year was, again, maybe there was more talk about it because of October 7th and more, because there had been more talk about Tisha B'Av, about that day. But what was interesting is, as I said, my dad wanted to have every year he wanted to have a Jewish music concert on Tu B'Av. He wanted it to be like a summer Jewish festival. He had a dream of like having a Jewish Coachella every year. And it's his secular yard site today. He died 4 years ago today, but his yard site's actually in September on the Hebrew calendar. But I was definitely thinking about him today. And again, it's just coincidental that it happened to be Tu B'Av. It's partly because again the calendar is later. This year the holidays are all late, so that's why and almost lined up. But yeah, he was interceding on behalf of Tu B'Av. I would tell him, Dad, I said, you can't bring back a holiday that people don't celebrate the other holidays. You're going to bring back a holiday that no one's ever heard of. And he didn't care. He thought it was a good idea. And he's right. It is. His feeling always was that Judaism there's not enough happy stuff in Judaism. There's too much focus on sad stuff. And he wanted people to be happy too in Judaism. So that was something he really believed in. And I do too. So last week we finished up with Psalm 63, and we actually heard the Matis Yahu version of this beautiful. Look, we all know that, and John has pointed out before, there are Psalms that we would skip over if we could because they're very redundant in some cases, and they seem like they're not as powerful. This line in Psalm 63 is a really, really powerful line that we heard last week. And it's one that Matis Yahu put to song. Sama lechol nafshi. God, you are my God. I search for you. And then this line here, my soul thirsts for you. My body yearns for you. And it's clearly talking about God. Okay? As a parched and thirsty land that has no water. And that's an amazingly spiritual text, spiritual yearning that people feel like they're dried, parched from not having God, but they want God. And it's just an amazingly powerful line. However, 2,800 years ago, 3,000 years ago, whenever that was written, that is as powerful. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's a transcendent line. The rest of it's beautiful too, but that line really stands out as one of the more powerful lines, I think, in all of Psalms. It's not talked about a lot because it's not the answer isn't there. You hope, and it kind of ends, but the king shall rejoice in God, and all who swear by him shall exult when the mouth of the liars is stopped. But I mean, that's like, it's going to happen, but it's not really as beautiful as the request to have God, which isn't really responded. There's not a response as powerful to match it. But that line is again, that's one of the reasons why he put it to music. So we're going to read and we're going to actually see a shift in these Psalms today in kind of the last few Psalms that we've read in the 60s. And we're going to see a shift into this Psalm is very similar to the previous Psalm. It's a very short Psalm 64. It's also, again, not one that like has a lot of distinctive words in it, but lines, but it's very similar to the last few that we've read. So let's take a look at it. Sometimes these are called laments, Psalms of lament, but there are a lot of them could be called Psalms of lament then. But so let's take a look at this one. It says for the leader, Lam Natseach, and it just says Mizmor LaDavid, a Psalm of David, which is kind of the standard introduction to a Psalm of David. All right. Which I
Hear
think
my voice, O God, when I
115 of
plead.
them.
Guard my life from the enemy's terror. Hide me from a band of evil men, from a crowd of evildoers who whet their tongues like swords. They aim their arrows, cruel words, to shoot from hiding at the blameless man. They shoot him suddenly and without fear. They arm themselves with an evil word. When they speak, it is to conceal traps. They think, who will see them? Let the wrongdoings they have concealed, each one inside him, his secret thoughts, be wholly exposed. God shall shoot them with arrows. They shall be struck down suddenly. Their tongue shall be their downfall. All who see them shall recoil in horror. All men shall stand in awe. They shall proclaim the work of God and his deed, which they perceived. The righteous shall rejoice in the Lord and take refuge in him. All the upright shall exult.
Yeah. And it almost ends exactly like the last one, right? Except there it just says, but the king shall rejoice in God, Bahamelech. But it's the same kind of, or there'll be celebrations, there'll be exaltations when that one says, when the mouths of the liars are stopped. And then this is the righteous shall rejoice in the Lord and take refuge of him, in him, and the upright shall exalt. So these are, again, not used in a lot of, these lines don't pop up in Jewish prayers. They're not especially, well known. It's, as you can see, it's a fairly short psalm, but very similar in a lot of ways to the previous ones. I'm under attack. Other people are harming me, sometimes with words, but that's bad. That's bad. It's not, that's not an easy thing either when people are attacking you, even if it's just with words. All right. So that's similar to what we've been reading last week. Now, this one changes a little bit. It also has one extra word in the introduction. It says Lam Natseach, for the leader, for the conductor, Mizmor LaDavid, and then it says a shir, a song. We don't know that the other ones, we assume the other ones were songs too. So why does it say shir? We don't know, and it just translated as songs, but a song. But was this something that was sung a cappella, maybe without instruments? It says for the conductor, but was this a choral, an only choral? We don't know. But it does have this extra word shir. But again, it is a Mizmor LaDavid, a song.
I have another question. When was the first archaeological evidence of David, that there was a kingdom of David?
Okay, so that goes back to your Tel Dan inscription. So the Tel Dan inscription actually says Beit David, the house of David. And that, most archaeologists, the vast majority of archaeologists say that's a legitimate reference to the house of David, which means if by 850 people were referring to David's house, then there was a David and there was a Davidic line. There are archaeologists who say we don't have any archaeological evidence for David, so where's the archaeological evidence for David? The first would be from the Tel Dan inscription, which is from about 850 BCE, which is 150 years after David, right?
Yeah.
So if they already have an established house that they call the House of David by 850, it's highly likely that there was a David. Is it proof? No. We don't have an inscription written by David or a contemporary of David. But that inscription put to rest some people who doubted the existence of David, who said he's simply a myth. He was invented.
Okay, thank you. I knew you
But
would
that's
know.
150. It's 150 years after. I know, but it sounds established. It sounds legit. And I will tell you this, more than that. And I'm not I don't necessarily believe, again, the Bible is a contemporaneous source for a lot of things. but I do believe it's contemporary. I do believe that the book of Samuel has stories about David written by people who knew David, who talked about David in a way that he allowed them to, with his blessing. He allowed them to depict him the way that he's depicted in a not always pleasant light, which speaks highly to David's humility and character enough to recognize that he was going to be captured in his flaws. There's no other way to explain what happens. And again, I'm not making that up. It's not my feeling. It's not my gut. It's not my wish. Legitimate biblical scholars believe that that was written by people. The book of Samuel is a record of people who knew what was going on. It wasn't just oral stories. It wasn't just legends. The conversations might be embellished or maybe not exactly the way they were said, because how would, unless someone was sitting there literally writing it down as David's talking to Bathsheba or David's talking to Saul or David's talking, unless there's someone writing it down, then the conversations are somewhat reconstructed. But that's no different than what happens in a lot of historical works today, where conversations are not necessarily dictated, but people understand that those conversations happened. So and you can kind of guess what was said.
Yeah.
Right. So I think, again, we can't prove David's existence completely, but again, we have records. We have a record 150 years after he lived, which seems to establish that he was definitely alive, or that he established a dynasty, and that the book itself, I think, is a good proof of it.
Okay.
All right, so let's take a look at Psalm 65, which is considered more of a psalm of praise, of celebration, of joy, rather than the previous ones, which are considered psalms of lament. So they are kind of organized or at least grouped that way, because this and the next few psalms are like this. They are, well, you'll see. Let's see how they're different. Again, if you were only here this week and weren't here last week, the last one we read, 64, is very similar to what 63 and 62 and pretty much the last 5 look like. Let's take a look at this one.
Praise befits you in Zion, O God. Vows are paid to you. All mankind comes to you, you who hear prayer. When all manner of sins overwhelm me, it is you who forgive our iniquities. Happy is the man you choose and bring near to dwell in your courts. May we be sated with the blessings of your house, your holy temple. Answer us with victory through awesome deeds, O God, our deliverer, in whom all the ends of the earth and the distant seas put their trust, who by his power fixed the mountains firmly, who is girded with might, who stills the raging seas, the raging waves, and tumultuous peoples. Those who live at the ends of the earth are awed by your signs. You make the lands of sunrise and sunset shout for joy. You take care of the earth and irrigate it. You enrich it greatly with the channel of God full of water. You provide grain for men, for so do you prepare it. Saturating its furrows, leveling its ridges, you soften it with showers. You bless its growth. You crown the year with your bounty. Fatness is distilled in your paths. The pasture lands distill it. The hills are girded with joy. The meadows are clothed with flocks, the valleys mantled with grain. They raise a shout, they break into song.
Totally different than the previous psalm. Totally different than the previous groups of psalms, right? This is not about people attacking me. This is not about somebody who's on the run or feels that they're under attack verbally or physically. This is look at the beautiful world that God has. Look at the beautiful way that we can express our thanks to God. It starts off with, I'm going to bring sacrifices to you, right? I'm going to, yeah.
Happy is the man who chooses and brings near.
Yeah, but it does talk about the temple, right? It does say in your holy house, right? In your holy temple. So, yeah, which is interesting, right? Because King David didn't have a temple. So if this is David who's saying it, He's talking about a temple that doesn't exist yet. Yes, that's actually an anachronism. That's why this had to have been during the time of Solomon. Well, assumedly, again, when it talks about your house, your bite, this is a building. David in his life only had the ark in a tent. The tent he brought into Jerusalem. He made Jerusalem the capital. He brought in the ark. But yes, it's very important to note that during his lifetime, you would hardly call it a bite. You would hardly call it a temple, a house. Here it says holy temple, the Heichal, the Beit Kodesh, your holy house. All those words are used that imply that this is a functioning building, a big building. So yeah, it's a little different. And
Look, Rabbi,
yeah,
we
Yeah.
don't think all these psalms are written by David anyways, right?
yes, I know. But when we see a psalm that, yeah, when we see a psalm that's very clearly talking about Jerusalem's temple, yeah, it's definitely, look, the Orthodox will tell you that he projected of what it would be like to worship in the temple. He wanted people to worship in the temple with this kind of song. So he could have said he wrote it ahead of time, knowing that they will sing it there. But the reality is, again, for hundreds of years, they had a chance to do this. There's also, look, we also talked about the fact that they borrowed stuff from the Canaanites, and the Canaanites might have had similar psalms for their temples. For their Canaanite temples to Baal. There's another possibility too, that before Israel had a temple in Jerusalem, they had lots of temples all around the country. They had maybe not anywhere near as big as that temple, but remember, once the Northern Kingdom, seceded, they had a temple in Dan, they had one in Bethel, they had at least two, and before that, they had smaller temples all around the country. It was the Jerusalem Kohanim that said, no, we can only offer sacrifices in Jerusalem. But it took a long time to get people to believe that. They didn't believe it. And so when somebody says, hey, I worship God in my house, maybe it wasn't Jerusalem always. I mean, look, this one does say Zion. So but did they adapt a psalm that was about praying God and then put in Zion? It could have been, we don't know. So could it have been a psalm from the time of David, even though there wasn't a Jerusalem yet? There was a Jerusalem, but not a Jerusalem temple. Yeah, it's possible.
That's interesting, because if they hadn't have said you could just sacrifice at the temple in Jerusalem, we could have had the Jerusalem temple destroyed, and it would be feasible today. We still could be making sacrifices in other places.
Correct. By making the temple one place, and then having that temple be destroyed, they destroyed sacrifices.
Yeah. Which anybody in their right mind, I mean, most don't want the temple rebuilt. We don't want to go back to doing sacrifices.
Yep.
I find very interesting that my notes here, it says coming into God's presence in order to pay his vow. It's just like you said, present an offering, right?
Yep.
And then the next thing, the payment is made possible by God's heart. Now our payment is coming in and just being present, right? And experience God's presence. This is our payment. Our payment is our time.
Yeah.
Back then, it was their time plus.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah.
I find that very interesting, actually.
Well, that's what we're.
Back then, they had to farm and harvest, and they had to be away from whatever.
Yeah. So John's point is that prayer for us took this place of the sacrifices.
Back then, they had to do both.
Well, yes and no, because the focus was really on the sacrifice. How much of it was the prayer part? You don't hear them talk a lot about praying. You hear them singing about God, exalting God, but praying to God, they don't use the word prayer a lot. Look, the rabbis are always looking for those words, right? We will see it on Wednesday night. They'll say, when it says when it says converse with God, they say that means prayer. When we read it last week, they play on the words and they say, when you stand in front of God, that's praying, right? They said that Isaac stood before God. Well, that means he was really praying. So they're looking for it all over the place. But we actually don't read a lot about people praying. We hear about them offering sacrifices. Did they pray? Absolutely, they prayed. I mean, to think that they just offered sacrifices is ridiculous. That was something that they did in addition to prayer. There was a prayer that went with the sacrifice, but that they did other things besides sacrificing and offered prayers, we know. The problem is we don't have descriptions of it. By the time of the rabbinic period, by the time the rabbis are writing this stuff, absolutely they are trying to tell people that the sacrifices have now been replaced with prayer. What's interesting about it, of course, is that we use the same word. In Hebrew, the word avodah means service or work. That's what the sacrifices were called. They were called avodah. We use the same word for prayer, which is service, or really it's work. Avodah is the same word for work.
To me, all these songs are a form of prayer. When
Correct.
you say, yeah, it's
Oh, I agree. But John, to John's point, that's actually what the word avodah means. In Hebrew, the word avodah means prayer.
right.
But it's also the exact same word as work. If you say, I'm going to my work, avodah, that's what the word is for work. We don't usually use that word for prayer anymore because we say, we use the word tefillah, which means to pray. But in Hebrew, like when the rabbis talk about prayer, they use the word avodah because they just literally said that after the temple was destroyed, their prayer became work, their work. That was their service. And that's also the word we use. We use service, right? When we say we're going to services, that is a service, assumedly servicing the Lord. That's serving the Lord. It's to be of service to the Lord, which is what the Kohanim did. So
You could
it's all
argue
part.
that mitzvahs too are service to the Lord, right?
Yeah, well, that's in any kind of work, right? Any kind of good deed, or any kind of mitzvah, any kind of commandment. But avodah, it's interesting that John brought that up because that's actually the word for it. It actually means work. Now, what's interesting is that if we perceive that our prayers are taking the place of those sacrifices, the idea is that God stores up those prayers, and it is essentially we're doing that work. Interestingly, as I mentioned a few times, I don't like using the word service anymore. I'm trying to purge that word off my lips because to me, service does not sound very fun. Now, obviously, oftentimes work doesn't seem like fun, but to me, the idea that going to synagogue is like work, for some people, for a lot of years, that was enough for people to feel that they were serving God by going to synagogue. I don't know how many, look, I don't know, I'll ever know. But how many years ago, how many generations ago did our ancestors, did our grandparents and great grandparents who went to shul 3 or 4 times a week, did they feel like they had to go because that was the way they were serving God? Clearly, people don't feel that way anymore. So what we've done instead, I'm only getting on this tangent because you brought it up, John, and it's a good question. And it's one that I think about a lot, which is that what we're trying to do with service today with a worship experience, which I don't use the word worship a lot, but when we talk about Shabbat celebration, which is the word that I try to use, is I try to make it an experience of joy, not one of servitude. Servitude to me sounds not happy. And I don't know if that's because I personally don't believe that God needs us to feel like coming to services is like work. But our ancestors at some point felt that. They felt like going to synagogue. John, you've seen it. I've actually cut out the parts because they're actually somewhat annoying. But we're going to talk about it tomorrow night. That the rabbis do say, even in the midst of this service, they also say you have to come up with extemporaneous prayer. You have to come up with prayers of the heart. But they're also saying that to some extent because we know that even today there are people who say, why do you go to synagogue? Because I have to. God demands that I go to synagogue, and they feel compelled to pray because God demands that prayer the way God demanded sacrifices. And there are
That-
Jews who feel that way.
That feeds right into the idea that some parents feel like, I was miserable in Hebrew school, you have to go because, you have to be
Yeah,
as
it's
miserable.
service. It's
Yeah.
service.
Which we
But
try
that's
to
also that you have to be as miserable as I was.
Yeah.
But the idea behind it though of serving God is something that I guess is also theologically not part of my makeup, where I don't believe that God necessarily needs us to be here to serve him or her. What?
I think it's a big, deep discussion probably beyond this psalm is, and how far this, goes back 2,000 years, when people started going, wow, day to night, night to day, water, animal, how is this whole thing? God, we're still, I can't explain it. This is a very deep psalm.
Okay, so, but one of the other things to think about, if you're living in a world where everybody is worshiping something, then telling somebody that you're worshiping what we tell you to worship, what your parents worship, what your friends in your community worship, that's on the table. But that's not on the table anymore. Nobody cares. Right? So I can't tell you you have to come, because if your neighbor's not coming and they're not even doing their thing, then there's no feeling like, oh, God demands it. Why? Because God's not demanding it of him, not demanding it of her. So none of us feel like God's demanding us to pray.
Life is very ephemeral, right? This is a deep one for me. Right?
It's very deep. It's very deep. But I want you to think about it, because you're coming on Wednesday nights too. And this issue of prayer, of why do we pray, understand that for our ancestors, and I'm talking about like 2 or 3 generations ago ancestors. I'm not talking about 3,000 years ago. I'm talking about 3 generations ago. These people felt that they had to pray in order to keep God happy.
Personally, me, myself,
Yeah.
out of all the 10 people, I look at it as praying. I look at it as interacting with God. The only issue that interaction has a caveat is that the interaction, the discussion that I'm having every Friday, every Wednesday, has been determined by those that went way before me.
Yeah, that's that's
the
that's the field you're playing on.
Correct.
Yeah, that's the field you're playing.
That's game.
But the reality is that the idea that you feel compelled to do it because God is literally storing up your prayers for energy or and to reward you back, most of us don't feel that way.
I'm trying to make sense of it all.
Okay, but again, most of us don't feel that way. Our ancestors felt that way. They felt that they were serving God because that's what was demanded of them. They had to do it. It was part of the arrangement. Yeah. So,
Water.
oh yeah, and people love the world. I mean, they love the earth. But keep this in mind. So this Psalm 66 is kind of a similar. It's part of this group of psalms of celebration and of joy, of thanks, of recognition. And there's going to be other groups of these in the books in the book of Psalms. This is not the last area, but let's take a look at it. Let's take a look at this one. So this is for the leader, a song, right? It's a sheer. And then it says a psalm. And then the next part of that same line then goes into Hari'ua le'Elohim kol haaretz, right? And so it's all part of the first line, which is why there's a period. And then it says, so it's almost like this line, either a scribal error, or they just didn't put this as a separate line. It goes with the first line of the psalm. So here's the psalm.
Raise a shout for God, all the earth. Sing the glory of his name. Make glorious his praise. Say to God, how awesome are your deeds. Your enemies cower before your great strength. All the earth bows to you and sings hymns to you. All sing hymns to your name, Selah. Come and see the works of God, who is held in awe by men for his acts. He turned the sea into dry land. They crossed the river on foot. We therefore rejoice in him. He rules forever in his might. His eyes scan the nations. Let the rebellious not assert themselves. Selah. O peoples, bless our God, celebrate his praises, who has granted us life and has not let our feet slip. You have tried us, O God, refining us as one refines silver. Caught us in a net, caught us in trammels. You have let men ride over us. We have endured fire and water, and you have brought us through to prosperity. I enter your house with burnt offerings. I pay my vows to you, vows that my lips pronounced, that my mouth uttered in my distress. I offer up fatlings to you with the odor of burning rams. I sacrifice bulls and he-goats. Selah. Come and hear, all God-fearing men, as I tell what he did for me. I called aloud to him, glorification on my tongue. Had I an evil thought in my mind, the Lord would not have listened. But God did listen. He paid heed to my prayer. Blessed is God, who has not turned away my prayer or his faithful care from me.
Here's an example, John, of the actual word for prayer. Tefillati. Tefillati. It's right here. It's not used a lot. It's used very, very, very rarely. So offering up sacrifices is words for those things are used a lot more, including saying I made a vow, I made a promise, and then clearly that vow or promise was a sacrifice. This also has an interesting formula where it actually says Baruch Elohim. It doesn't say Baruch Atah Adonai, but it does say Baruch Elohim Asher, God who, because we always use that word Asher, Kinshanu, Asher, B'mitzvah, we say God who, Asher. The word Asher means who or which, God who does these things. So this is almost like a formula, like a prayer. What's interesting, though, is there are other parts of this prayer that really don't sound Jewish. When I say they don't sound Jewish, this is one of those prayers where people say, one of these psalms where people say, it seems like we Judaized it. We made it like a Jewish thing because it doesn't sound really Jewish. And you can see the part, first of all, you see the refrain Selah. We've seen that before. That's some kind of musical, amen kind of thing, the way we do amen today. But yeah, it's this part right here, my friends. He turned the sea into dry land. They crossed the river on foot. We rejoice in him. This is going back to the parting of the Red Sea, right? And what I was going to tell you is, if you look at, maybe it was in the last one. Well, this one, by the way, also says house. This one actually doesn't say Zion. This one doesn't actually use the word Zion at all. It's one of the reasons why, it looks like looks a little bit more borrowed. But
Yeah, the caught us in a net. What is all that about?
Yeah. So if you look if you look at it, it sounds like the parts of our lives or the parts of our history, or you could say our individual lives where we've been abused. We've come out of that, right? We've we were in distress, but now we're, you've let men ride over us. We have endured fire and water, which is a phrase that we use even into modern day martyrdoms. We talk about Jews who've suffered, who've been tortured with fire and water. But you've brought us to prosperity. You've brought us out. But yeah, and again, here it talks about sacrifices. I pay my vows to you, burnt offerings. I mean, it literally says the vows, which again, the vows that I've promised, these sacrifices that I say, I offer up fatlings to you with the odor of burning. I mean, you can almost smell the sacrifices in this. So yeah, there's a feeling like, this could be for, for any God. This isn't necessarily our God, but, um, but it definitely is a celebration. It's like, it's not, again, about a person who's personally suffering, though again, it does talk about that we went through bad times, we've gone through bad times, but yeah, it's a similar kind of idea of celebrating God, and it's overall obviously mostly um, mostly celebration, but again, a lot about the sacrifices. Yeah. Any comments or questions? Again, not used. Nothing here sticks out as a text that's used in other in other in other prayers. That's been incorporated. Let me just see if any of this.
There's nothing in it that says, about a lot of the Psalms are, I was suffering because of wickedness. There's nothing about wickedness here.
Nope. Nope. And it's interesting because we are actually going to read a psalm soon. So yeah, you see that. You see like sometimes there's a reason for it. We're actually coming up, it's a good point, Rosemary. We're actually coming up on a psalm, a couple psalms from now, where the person literally says, I'm suffering for something I didn't do. Not just I'm suffering because somebody's punishing me or somebody's out to get me or whatever, but literally, I didn't do this. I didn't do what you said I did, which is not just like somebody's out to get me, and they have like their motives are to get me, punish me, they don't like me. But in the psalm, it actually literally says, I didn't do this. I didn't do what they're accusing me of doing. So yeah, we're getting to that. But there are those feelings that we get in the Psalms. And I think that's one of the reasons why Psalms are comforting to people when they're in distress, is they, most of the times we don't feel, or a lot of the times we feel that we don't deserve it. But there's some Psalms that are kind of like, this is my fault. I brought this on myself. But there are a lot of Psalms, and obviously the majority of them, which are, please let this end, God, because I didn't do anything to deserve it. Or as it is in this kind of Psalm, which is, the suffering, I'm coming through that suffering. I'm going to be done with that suffering. It's behind me now. So, but yeah, then we have like Psalm 22 where, God, why have you forsaken me? This is a far cry from that. Right. So this one, again, begins, not with interestingly, this one doesn't say David. This says for the leader, and then it says big Nigionot Mizmor Shir, which is almost like everything. Instrumental music, maybe, and instrument, right? Nigun, the word that we use today for a wordless prayer. So an instrumental maybe is what that nigunot means. A psalm is what they translate mizmor, and then a song is a shir. So there they go. It's like there's one of everything. This is a instrumental, mizmor, and a shir. So that's why they translated it with those different, those words that they use.
Is there a meaning for psalm?
The
word?
No. Interestingly, the word that we use for psalms, which is tehillim, is not the words that we use for these. So the word that they're translating as psalm here is mizmor, is a mizmor. The word that they're translating for song is a shir. So like Song of Songs is called Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs. But the word for psalms in Hebrew is tehillim, which means hallel, to say hallelujah, to praise. So interestingly, the word psalm really, or at least the book of Psalms, is really the book of praises. It's at least the Hebrew word we use for it, tehillim. Because it's not mizmorot, it's not shirot, it's not, or shirim, it's not a plural of those words. It's not shirim, songs. So I guess you could say is mizmor a good way of translating psalm? I don't know, but it's not what we call them. So yes, interestingly, the word Tehillim is not actually used. I don't think it's used at all as a description for one of these. No, no, there isn't one that says Tehillim. We have mizmors, we have shirs, we have nigyons. We don't have we don't have Tehillim. All right. So let's look at this one, because again, we don't know really what those words mean or how they're different from each other, but this one definitely has a Selah to it. And again, some people have tried to see if Selah can help us understand the rhythm or the meter, or why something's a mizmor and why something's a nigun. Well, not really nigun, but a mizmor or a shir. It doesn't help us. We haven't found a pattern with where Selah is used. And again, most translations don't. There's not a translation for Selah, because it means like Amen. So
That made me think, I wonder what AI is going to come up with.
it's a good point. All right. So this is Psalm 67.
May God be gracious to us and bless us. May he show us favor, Selah. That your way be known on earth, your deliverance among all nations. People will praise you, O God. All peoples will praise you. Nations will exult and shout for joy, for you rule the peoples with equity. You guide the nations of the earth, Selah. The peoples will praise you, O God. All peoples will praise you. May the earth yield its produce. May God, our God, bless us. May God bless us and be revered to the ends of the earth.
Now you can see that psalm is literally like 8 verses. That's what it is. It's 8 verses. It's very, very short. And it is this one's used a little bit for Jewish prayer. It's sometimes Orthodox synagogues read it as it's read on Mariv on Saturday nights. But again, this psalm seems to be really, even though it's only 8 verses, it's kind of redundant, but it seems to be really focused on other people recognizing you as God. It's like other people are going to recognize you too, God, because you're our God, but you're going to be everyone's God eventually. So, you're everyone's God. But we know you, but everyone's also going to know you. All the peoples will praise you. All peoples will praise you. So it's really a sense, that God will be, again, the last line. There won't be a place in the world where God won't be revered. So it's a very short psalm, and definitely seems to imply that God is eventually going to be a universal God. So it's, according to Wikipedia, it is used, it is sung at several masses throughout the year because of its theme of the universal grace of God. On the Friday of the 3rd week of Advent, and in the octave of the Nativity of Mary. It is also found on the 20th Sunday of the year A, the first of the 3 years of the cycle of readings. So you can see that the church liked it very much. Oh, and then here's the Anglican Church, Reverend Lynn. In the Church of England's Book of Common Prayer, this psalm is appointed to be read on the evening of the 12th day of the month, and it may be recited as a canticle in the Anglican liturgy of the evening prayer. So there you go. So there's definitely a feeling like Martin Luther liked this psalm too. He said he used particularly at Lutheran churches. So they like this one there too. So again, probably because of the universal nature of this, or it really does feel like eventually God will be spread all around the world, which you can make the argument that's exactly what the church did. So interestingly, this next psalm, Psalm 68, begins with almost the same stuff, except it doesn't say a nigun. It doesn't say an instrumental. It does say for the leader. It does say of David now. This one says of David. And this says a mizmor and a shir. So again, it seems like these are titles that had something to do with the way they were played. And depending on whether it's there or not, it changed the way that it would either be sung, maybe again, whether it was sung with played, accompanied with instruments, whether it was a 3-part harmony, a 5-part harmony, whatever it was, the people seem to know what these directions are. We don't know them now. So let's take a look at this psalm, which has some similar ideas from before, from the last ones.
God will arise. His enemies shall be scattered. His foes shall flee before him. Disperse them as smoke is dispersed, as wax melts at fire. So the wicked shall perish before God. But the righteous shall rejoice. They shall exult in the presence of God. They shall be exceedingly joyful. Sing to God, chant hymns to his name, extol him who rides the clouds. The Lord is his name, exult in his presence. The father of orphans, the champion of widows, God in his holy habitation. God restores the lonely to their homes, sets free the imprisoned safe and sound, while the rebellious must live in a parched land. O God, when you went at the head of your army, when you marched through the desert, Selah. The earth trembled, the sky rained because of God. Yon Sinai because of God, the God of Israel. You released a bountiful rain, O God. When your own land languished, you sustained it. Your tribe dwells there, O God. The Lord gives the command. The women who bring the news are a great host. The kings and their armies are in headlong flight. Housewives are sharing in the spoils. Even for those of you who lie among the sheepfolds, there are wings of a dove sheathed in silver, its pinions in fine gold. When Shaddai scattered the kings, it seemed like a snowstorm in Zalman. O majestic mountain, Mount Bashan, O jagged mountain, Mount Bashan, why so hostile, O jagged mountains, toward the mountain God desired as his dwelling? The Lord shall abide there forever. God's chariots are myriads upon myriads, thousands upon thousands. The Lord is among them as in Sinai in holiness. You went up to the heights, having taken captives, having received tribute of men, even of those who rebel against the Lord God's abiding there. Blessed is the Lord. Day by day he supports us. God, our deliverance. Selah. God is for us a God of deliverance. God the Lord provides an escape from death. God will smash the heads of his enemies, the hairy crown of him who walks about in his guilt. The Lord said, I will retrieve from Bashan, I will retrieve from the depths of the sea, that your feet may wade through blood, that the tongue of your dogs may have its portion of your enemies. Men see your processions, O God, the processions of my God, my King, into the sanctuary. First come singers, then musicians, amidst maidens playing timbrels. In assemblies, bless God, the Lord, O you who are from the fountain of Israel. There is little Benjamin who rules them, the princes of Judah who command them, the princes of Zebulun and Naphtali. Your God has ordained strength for you, the strength, O God, which you displayed for us from your temple above Jerusalem. The kings bring you tribute. Blast the beast of the marsh, the herd of bulls among the peoples, the calves, till they come cringing with pieces of silver. Scatter the peoples who delight in wars. Tribute bearers shall come from Egypt. Cush shall hasten its gifts to God. O kingdoms of the earth, sing to God, chant hymns to the Lord. Selah. To him who rides the ancient highest heavens, who thunders forth with his mighty voice. Ascribe might to God, whose majesty is over Israel, whose might is in the skies. You are awesome, O God, in your holy places. It is the God of Israel who gives might and power to the people. Blessed is God.
So that's a very long psalm, 36 verses. The previous one was 8 verses. This is 36 verses. It almost seems like 5 Psalms. And this Psalm definitely has some of the ideas as the previous ones. It's a celebration of God. It's talking about how wonderful God is. God's going to destroy enemies that he has, which, by the way, parts of this Psalm sound really, really pagan, right? This Psalm has a couple of references like this one. His majesty his might is in the skies, right? We see in this Psalm that God is riding the clouds, right? Sounds like Zeus, right? This
In the
Psalm,
mountains. This is about like a lightning god, you know,
yes. And this is a God
and it makes it rain.
who makes the earth tremble, right?
Mhm.
Right? This is a God who literally, it says, and what's strange about it, right? It says, it's like he's got like fire coming out of him, right?
And then the housewives are going to go out looting.
Yes. Well, look at this, by the way, right? So this is all, this is all, but in
Wait,
the
the
midst,
dogs will eat your enemy? The dog's
yes,
tongue?
Well,
yes,
that's generally what happens.
Oh, gosh.
yes. But yeah, this is a God who rides in the clouds, right? But then it says this is the God of the father of orphans, the
And the
champion of widows.
yeah.
So what's interesting about
I
this
could
is
use a
that,
champion for widows.
yeah, but this is not the Zeus.
Zeus is
This,
not the champion of widows.
the Zeus is raping women usually.
Right.
And this is a God who seems like the God that you'd have in the ancient world, a God who has power and has the ability to bring rain and life and, takes care of us. But there's also this understanding that this is a God who has compassion. And this is what's interesting about, like, when people try to say, well, this was borrowed from Canaanite liturgy. Okay, maybe they're all bothered. I mean, I don't think they're all borrowed from Canaanite liturgy. Let's say some of them are. So what? This isn't Canaanite. The Canaanite poetry doesn't talk about God being a God. Their God Baal is not father to the orphans or champion of the widows. That's a Jewish concept that God actually cares about the at-risk and vulnerable people, which is not a God usually who's a God of power. They don't go together. So this psalm actually forces you to see, and it's just, again, this is what makes people uncomfortable because it doesn't fall into neat categories. Oh, so the people who run around going, hey, look at this, it's stolen from the Canaanites. I'd be like, okay, but the Canaanite poetry doesn't talk about this, doesn't have their gods doing this. It has their gods. If they're going to do anything good for people, it's generally because they want something from people, and maybe gets a little bit to that whole service business where they need our help. They feed off of our sacrifices. But this is a God who, he's not just taking, he's actually caring about the most vulnerable people in our society, right? Restoring the lonely to the homes, setting free the imprisoned. So, yeah, I mean,
The pagans kind of had the idea that if those kinds of things happened to you was because you defended the gods in some way.
exactly. And you're getting what you deserved.
Mhm.
And again, that gives you a society, a structure where the weak and the disenfranchised wind up being slaves, because that's just what the gods wanted for them. The gods are punishing them for their wicked deeds. Somebody screwed up somehow. Judaism has a little bit different take on this, which is not necessarily any easier, because they don't necessarily know exactly how it happens, as we can see, but they also recognize that, geez, God doesn't want people to be victimized. So there definitely seems to be a few different things going on in the Psalms, but in this Psalm, but it's it's very similar to, again, some elements of it when it talks about, oh, majestic mountain, Mount Bashan, that's a mountain in the Golan. Well, and Zalmon is up in there's so much in this psalm. I don't want to, I don't want to, I don't want to belabor it, but even to call God Shaddai here, these are mountain God terms. We don't exactly know what Shaddai is. There's big debates over whether Shaddai has to do with some mountain deity that we incorporated the name of. The word El Shaddai is used as a title for God. Here, it's also used even without the word El before it. It's when Shaddai scattered the kings, but it's in the context of mountains, the mountains and the mountain of Zalmon, the mountain Bashan. This is almost like Olympus. And again, okay, I know it's there. It's not. It's clearly there. You can. I mean, you can. The traditional folk don't want to deal with this because it's so obvious that it's. But the Jewish people were clearly trying to come to terms with a God that isn't just a storm God, isn't just a God that lives on the mountains and looks down on us and doesn't really care what happens to us as long as he gets fed. So it is what it is. And again, it's clear that this is us because it says Mount Sinai, right? It talks about God delivering us. So it's clearly a psalm that even if it came from a pagan source, when it talks about Benjamin and Judah and Zebulun and Naphtali, when it calls out the tribes, 4 of them by name, this is definitely an Israelite psalm. Is it adapted? Maybe, but it's been adapted and it's made very Israelite. So even though, again, there's elements of it that are very pagan, I'm not denying that. It's also interesting that there's elements of this that are very Jewish. Clearly, we've taken ownership of this by putting our tribes in it. And again, it's a God who cares about us. The God who's, as it so says so beautifully, has ordained strength for you. Right? God has this strength and God will give you this strength. God will instill this strength within you. So it's a really beautiful, it's a really beautiful idea that, that God actually is going to be with you and that strength is going to be that strength that maybe is manifest as lightning and thunder and everything else. You're going to have that strength too. So, it's kind of an interesting, it's an interesting, some of this is also used as part of the liturgy, but it's a very, very long psalm. I mean, it's 5 times longer than the previous psalm we just read, 67. Any other comments or questions or, again, I'm not denying that there's a lot of pagan element to it, but it definitely, at the end of the day, it blends it so well that you'd say, well, so what? So what's the point? Okay, so we adapted a psalm, or somebody like that imagery. So, yeah. So the next psalm, Psalm 69, and we're going to listen to a musical version of this one in a second. So that last psalm, 36 verses. The previous psalm was 8 verses. This psalm's kind of in between. But this is Psalm 69, and it begins with a Lam Natzach, and it is here. It's of David, but it also is all Shoshanim, which meaning of the Hebrew uncertain. But again, a Shoshan is
not roses. Shoshana.
it is a lily,
Ah,
right? Shoshanim, right?
yes. Well,
Erev
sometimes it's
Shoshanim.
rose, right? I thought like Susan came from the name Shoshana.
Yeah, but Suzanne or Susanna, Susan.
Yeah.
But Sharon is oftentimes the word that we use for rose, or a vered in modern Hebrew. But a Shoshan is a lily, rose of Sharon. That's right. So it's a Sharon. Anyways, but it's some kind of flower, but that doesn't explain why is it all Shoshanim. So it's either, again, the
It's
musical
a
instrument.
lily-shaped instrument.
Lily-shaped instrument, yes, that's what maybe we think. Maybe it's shaped like a lily, like some guitars are shaped in a certain shapes. We don't know. Yeah, we don't know. Or again, is it the style of music, but the way it was played. It was played in a choral arrangement that was called a Shoshan, the Shoshanim. We don't know, which is why it says meaning of Hebrew. So it's terrible. We don't know what these directions mean. And I don't know that we're going to break that code, because if it was the way it was sung, you'd have to know how, you'd have to have a recording of it or some kind of description. I mean, I don't know how we'll ever know. We won't, but we'll listen to different versions of the Psalms, and we're definitely listening to a lot of modern ones, but coming up, we're going to listen to some Gregorian versions of these, and actually some Jewish Gregorian versions of these. But let's look at Psalm 69. Someone that I know, I haven't seen her in a while. She wrote a musical version of this, which is very literal in a way. But this one kind of goes back a little bit to the previous Psalms, which are Psalms of turmoil. And as I said, this Psalm definitely gives us a sense of like, God, why is this happening to me? I didn't do anything to deserve this. So let's take a look at this. So this is a very visual and I think a very powerful Psalm of suffering, of dealing with difficult times.
Deliver me, O God, for the waters have reached my neck. I am sinking into the slimy deep and find no foothold. I have come into the watery depths. The flood sweeps me away. I am weary with calling. My throat is dry. My eyes fail while I wait for God. More numerous than the hairs of my head are those who hate me without reason. Many are those who would destroy me, my treacherous enemies. Must I restore what I have not stolen? God, you know my folly. My guilty deeds are not hidden from you. Let those who look to you, O Lord, God of hosts, not be disappointed on my account. Let those who seek you, O God of Israel, not be shamed because of me. It is for your sake that I have been reviled, that shame covers my face. I am a stranger to my brothers, an alien to my kin. My zeal for your house has been my undoing. The reproaches of those who revile you have fallen upon me. When I wept and fasted, I was reviled for it. I made sackcloth my garment. I became a byword among them. Those who sit in the gate talk about me. I am the taunt of drunkards. As for me, may my prayer come to you, O Lord, at a favorable moment. O God, in your abundant faithfulness, answer me with your sure deliverance. Rescue me from the mire. Let me not sink. Let me be rescued from my enemies and from the watery depths. Let the flood waters not sweep me away. Let the deep not swallow me. Let the mouth of the pit not close over me. Answer me, O Lord, according to your great steadfastness. In accordance with your abundant mercy, turn to me. Do not hide your face from your servant, for I am in distress. Answer me quickly. Come near to me and redeem me. Free me from my enemies. You know my reproach, my shame, my disgrace. You are aware of all my foes. Reproach breaks my heart. I am in despair. I hope for consolation, but there is none. For comforters, but find none. They give me gall for food, vinegar to quench my thirst. May their table be a trap for them, a snare for their allies. May their eyes grow dim so that they cannot see. May their loins collapse continually. Pour out your wrath on them. May your blazing anger overtake them. May their encampment be desolate. May their tents stand empty. For they persecute those you have struck. They talk about the pain of those you have felled. Add that to their guilt. Let them have no share of your beneficence. May they be erased from the book of life and not be inscribed with the righteous. But I am lowly and in pain. Your help, O God, keeps me safe. I will extol God's name with song and exalt him with praise. That will please the Lord more than oxen, than bulls with horns and hooves. The lowly will see and rejoice. You who are mindful of God, take heart. For the Lord listens to the needy and does not spurn his captives. Heaven and earth shall extol him, the seas and all that moves in them. For God will deliver Zion and rebuild the cities of Judah. They shall live there and inherit it. The offspring of his servants shall possess it. Those who cherish his name shall dwell there.
So again, long psalm, almost like two different psalms.
Yeah.
But this psalm is very descriptive of somebody who's suffering, right? I'm suffering, I'm sinking, I'm in the mire, I'm in the slimy deep. I can't find a foothold. I mean, this is a very descriptive way of kind of describing someone who's can't get out of the depression, can't get out of their predicament. They can't climb out of the hole that they're in because
Describes depression really well when you're in
it
that.
does, right?
Feeling like you're underwater.
Yeah.
Yep. And
drowning.
again, for somebody who's so they feel like they're in a pit, right? And as they're trying to climb out of the pit, they can't because it's slimy on the sides, right? So they're trying to find a foothold. They're trying to find something that they can grab onto to help them, and they can't because every time they reach out for something, it's slimy. It doesn't have anything that they can grasp. It's slippery. And the person says, look, the person who's saying this says, look, I have so many people against me, I can't even count them. Like the hairs on my, I'm getting to be where I don't have that many left. But the people who have hairs on their heads, there's so many of them, they can't even count their enemies. And the person says, I haven't taken what they, I can't restore something I haven't taken. And the person says, you know what I've done wrong. If I've done something wrong, you know it. I haven't done this, what they're accusing me of, I haven't done. So what's so amazing about this is, again, this is somebody who feels like, look, I'm not perfect, but I don't deserve this. I don't deserve what's happening to me. And there's not many descriptions of somebody feeling that they're suffering for no reason. I get, the book of Job is famous because it's about a suffering person, but he doesn't describe his suffering in these ways. These are beautiful ways of describing suffering. Again, depression, just the inability to get control of one's life. I just don't really know if there's a better description of it in the ancient world, or even for that matter, in the modern world. So, the person definitely say, hey, look, God, rescue me from this place, take me out of here. But it's different than just, clearly a physical attack, right? This is somebody who feels emotionally, right, that they're underwater. It's the same way we say it today, that I'm underwater. I can't keep, I can't keep afloat. I can't keep my head above water.
What's interesting to me, what I'm focusing on is line 10.
Mm-hmm.
My eyes can't leave that one line.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So why? Yeah. What's so powerful?
I feel for your house.
Yeah. Yep.
Been my doing.
Mm-hmm. So I'm being punished because I love you, God.
Reproaches of those who revile you.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm being punished because of you, which is an interesting way of kind of guilting God into protecting him. Like, God, I'm suffering because of you.
Well, he also says that line, and most kind of like what Moses said a lot. People aren't going to think you're much of a God if you don't protect me.
Yes, you're guilting God into saying, you're forcing God into responding because, God, I'm only suffering because of you.
But I look at it differently. I look at it like when we go to the rallies or something, right? Mm-hmm. Is that my undoing? That the people that are protesting don't. That's all I'm saying is that I'm looking at it differently than that. I'm trying to apply them.
Oh, no, I don't think you're looking at it differently. You're looking at it from the standpoint of, God, if I'm suffering for you, if I'm
faith.
Yes.
My faith.
Yeah.
Judaism.
Yes. If I'm,
being attacked by-
yes. And Jews have said that throughout history, which is, God, we are suffering for you. Yeah. Yeah. Do something, because we're only suffering because of you, God. Yes, this is the ultimate guilting God into doing something. It's fair to say that this is something that the Jews would oftentimes do. Look, we don't do it anymore, but I mean, some people do, but there's a whole liturgy we do on Yom Kippur called the Martyrology liturgy, which we didn't even do it as a kid, but I used to read it in the Machzor because I found it so fascinating. There was a whole liturgy on Yom Kippur where we were supposed to read about the 10 martyrs that were killed by the Romans during the Bar Kokhba revolt. Rabbi Akiva, whose skin gets taken off of his living body. Hanina ben Teradion, who was wrapped in a Torah and burned alive. We're supposed to remind God of these people, right, on Yom Kippur, because fix the problems that we have, help us, save us because of what these people did. So, oh yeah, I mean, sometimes it's not even our sins. Sometimes it's, I mean, not even our problem. It's give us something for what these people suffered with. Oh yeah. So we're guilting God into protecting us and helping us. And in some cases, it's not even, yeah, it's not even, yeah. Oh yeah. This is kind of Yom Kippur's version of these people suffered for you, God. They suffered for us. So, look, this Psalm is used in some of the high holiday liturgy even today. But these lines got into the New Testament and got into Christian scripture a lot. You know, to some extent,
But I'm not seeing it as God come and help me. No, I just see it as an I don't know. I'm not looking. I don't see what you guys see. I see not just that line as I go through the rest of it. I just see, my faith in Judaism is causing this.
yeah.
Is it worth it? Yes, it's worth it.
Yeah, but we want God to respond to it. We're asking God to do something about it, to act for that. Yeah, but Jesus goes through this with gall, when it talks about, that you're, I mean, this is what Jesus suffers with, So yes, we suffer with it. For Christians, Jesus suffered with it. And, there is this understanding that God, you're going to fix our situation because of what these people have dealt with. So we're going to listen to, so there's a beautiful version of this that was written by Beth Schaefer, who we brought out years ago for Purim. She's in Florida now. She's written a lot of great Jewish music, very inspired by people like Debbie Friedman. But yeah, she's a really good cantor from Florida. And she wrote a version of Psalm 69. And it's interesting because it's really like the words of Psalm 69. Like, you'd think, how could you take these words and put them into a psalm? And it's in English. And she does one of the lines in Hebrew. I'll show it to you as she sings it. But she finishes it, interestingly, with the Birkat HaGomel, which no one's really done a version of. And the Birkat HaGomel is something that we do. We've talked about it before. When we had the survivors of Nova with us, I was just talking about that the other day, that we've had 3,000 people that have watched the survivors when they came here. They've looked it up, but they've looked on our Facebook page. But the Gomel, we bench Gomel. Judith, when do we bench Gomel?
After we survive a terrible thing, like
Yeah.
I had a cousin bench Gomel. She made it through some tough surgeries, and she benched Gomel a couple weeks ago.
Yep. So if you survive a car accident, if you survive some type of harrowing ordeal.
You benched a Gomel for me last year when I survived pneumonia.
I did.
Yeah.
So sometimes if people survive some kind of specific, some kind of trauma that was like, they really feel like they've come out of it. This is the traditional Gomel prayer. And I did it with
Sedona,
what?
in Sedona, we used to do it every year in the high holidays. She would do it.
Yeah, I mean,
For anybody.
I think it's a very personal prayer. I wouldn't do it unless like, I wouldn't do it for somebody unless I asked for permission or they asked me to do it. But so we say bench, which is again Yiddish for saying, praying it, benching, right? So you call up the person usually and you do it. And as I said, I did it with these kids who survived, because and they said that was the first time anyone had done it with them, which was, I thought was I was grateful that we could do it. But the prayer is Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hagomel chayivim tovot shegamalani kol tov. Blessed are you, God, ruling spirit of the universe, who rewards the undeserving with goodness and who's rewarded me with goodness. And after the person says that, the congregation says, Amen. May the one who rewarded you with goodness continue to reward you with only goodness. Selah. There's that word Selah we say, like Amen, right? This one has an Amen and a Selah. Now, what's interesting about this, of course, is that it sounds like a kind of, well, look, like I don't deserve this. I don't deserve to be saved. But because that's kind of what it's saying, right? It's saying, and again, some of the translations are a little toned down. I don't think I use the word undeserving of goodness, but there's this sense of humility, right? It's a sense of saying, God, I don't know what I did to deserve it, right? Maybe that's the better way to understand it. Like, I'm not thinking that you saved me from this disaster because I did something special, but thank you. I'm humbled by it, right? And the important thing is the congregation says, we want you to continue to be blessed with goodness. You should have good things. This is actually a pretty good translation. It's a more hopeful, upbeat translation, but sometimes like the translation of it almost sounds like, oh geez, like, but you're supposed to have a sense of humility about that. You're not supposed to go, look at me. God loves me so much that I didn't, because what happens to the woman who didn't get saved from the illness? You don't want to say, hey, I deserved it. Sorry, you didn't. So there's a real sense here that like, we don't know. I don't know why. I don't know why I was saved, but I was. And so for that, we say thank you. And it's a really powerful prayer. I mean, I've said it a couple times in my life when I've survived car accident, survived a car accident and, that kind of stuff. So
How about at the beach when you're drowning?
did I say it in Mexico? Yeah, I did say it in Mexico. When I was drowned. I definitely did. And the important thing is you got to say it with other people, right? You have to have the other people have to be there to say, we hope you keep getting blessing. So we're going to listen to this version, and we'll also, I'll pop the words up because I think it's really interesting that she was able to come up with a musical version of this. Again, you'll hear it's very Debbie Friedman-esque. So I'm going to put it on, and this is called Psalm 69, Birkat HaGomel. So this is called from an album she wrote a few years ago called The Quest and the Question. So it's got some other good songs on it too, but this one's the psalm. So I'm going to put up the translation too.
Deliver me, God, for the waters are up to my neck. I am slipping, I'm sinking, I'm fearing the watery depths. My voice is weary from crying, and my eyes are beginning to dry. As I wait for you, God, I grow tired and beg a reply. crowns on my head are those filled with hate. With no reason they plot against me, but what is my fate? Must I restore what I have not stolen? For you know that this is my plight. I'm not hiding my gross imperfections from you tonight.
This part of you.
Deliver me out of the mire, away from the spite. Let the waters not sweep me away. I pray that I might be safe from the watery darkness, be spared from the mouth of hell. Don't hide your face from your servant, be near me to dwell. Vani tefilati lecha Adonai, et ratzon Elohim berov chasdecha neni be'emet yishecha. Baruch atah
This is the Gomel.
Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam hagomel lechayavim tovot shegmalani kol tov. Oh, tov.
So that's a really nice version of a prayer for help, right? When people, well, that, yeah, they're on Apple Music, Spotify. So Beth Schaefer came out here years ago when we had the Purim Fest at Magic Mountain. I was able to bring her out. She was friends with some of the other singers here in California. That's how I met her. But she had an interesting story. She came out later in life, and I don't know if that affected her writing. I don't know if that was part of, why she wrote that song. I don't know. She wrote a lot of, I think she's written, well, it's kind of weird, her prolific period of writing songs is not, I don't know why it happens that people, kind of go through periods of time where they write a lot of music. But she's really, really, really good, I think. Here's a picture of, here's Beth. That's Beth. And she wrote a song that we do a lot at our temple, or we've done a lot over time. We've done it, and I'll play you this one because we've done it a lot. And it's this one that we do. I'll play a little bit of it.
In this house, it all comes together in this house. In this house, it all comes together in this house of God.
Remember this song, people? Wendy does this a lot, or did it a lot over time.
In this house beats the heart of a family. In this house is the center of a this house, in this house. In this house is a spark of God's creation. In this house there is joy and celebration. By song or by word, your prayers will be heard. In this house, in this house, in this house.
So that was In This House. So we play that a lot. I mean, that was one of the songs that we played over the years. And it's one that, when Wendy heard it, she's like, I'm going to play that. So that was definitely one that we've played over the years a lot. But yeah, she had a couple of really big albums. Haven't heard from her as much lately, but I think she's working more now as a regular cantor. I think when she was kind of doing gigs and writing a lot more, but I think she's, attached to a synagogue now in Florida. So I think she's maybe not as prolific as a writer as she used to be. But yeah, we haven't scheduled a Shabbat with her yet, but that might be down the road. Somebody who we would do one with, because she's written some really great music. I would say one of the better songwriters, Jewish songwriters since Debbie Friedman, definitely inspired by her. And she's a great musician too. I mean, she happens to have, I think, a really good voice too. So, yeah, so I liked how she brought Psalm 69 together with the Birkat HaGomel for somebody who's going through a difficult period, and they come out of that difficult period and they could say Gomel, because we actually have a prayer to say when we come out of that. It's hard sometimes to know, like when we've come out of a depression or out of a time, that, we're not going to go back in, but I guess you never know. But again, a lot of times people will say it when they know that they've survived something that was really dangerous. So, but it's not Mike, I just want to point out, I don't think it's a prayer that should be done every year necessarily. It should be done, God forbid, more than once in your life.
So what she does is she has the people.
Yeah, everybody. I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's to me, it's such a private experience that it's one of those things that it's like, you can't.
When we first got there to Sedona back in 2008, I had gone through gallbladder surgery that I almost actually died, according to the doctor. So I did stand up, and I felt so embarrassed.
Yeah, I think, well, you also, it was your first time, it was your first year there too, or your first, early days there. I think you definitely want to do it in a community that that knows you. I would never put somebody on the spot to do it. I would never tell somebody, hey, you should really come up and do it. But I think it's a meaningful thing to do. And the one good thing about doing it the way they did it in Sedona is at least people know that there exists a prayer for that kind of thing. But it really is not something, God forbid, you'd have to do it many times in your life.
Yeah,
hopefully,
I felt, like I said, I was embarrassed, but I also felt very spiritual, having never done that before. So it was something.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's like, yes, it is. And I really think it's really the kind of thing of saying, like, I made it through something. Look, I could just give you an example. If you go into remission from cancer, you might be like, oh, I'm okay. But like in the back of your mind, you're like, is it going to come back? It's really almost for someone who's survived a trauma. And, again, sometimes people go, I'm in remission, it's back. I would never say to somebody, hey, look, you're cured, and say the Gomel. Like that's almost asking for people to, I'm not saying that you're going to get I'm not saying you're going to get cancer back because of that, but is it something that you really want to? Oh, another example is like, if somebody is in recovery, if they're sober, like, would you do that after their 5th year, their 10th year of sobriety? For people who are trying to live a sober life, you never feel like you're out of the woods. You never feel like you can almost say Birkat HaGomel because you never put it behind you. If you survived an overdose, let's say, and you came out of it and you didn't die, then you might want to say Birkat HaGomel. But it's one of those things where it's almost like you got to say, hey, I can put that behind me now. I'm never going to worry about that again, or God forbid I ever worry about that again. But it's a tough thing to do just like, you know, that's why I would say if like for mental health, like how do you even do that unless you had like a suicide attempt or something like, you know, something where it was just a trauma, you know, it's a trauma prayer of surviving a traumatic event. But it's a powerful experience. And I think Jews should know that we have a prayer for that. And yeah, there's hopefully not a time that you have to do it, but if you do,
Well, like,
do
but
it.
also, like you said, there's a prayer for traveling, like you'll say tomorrow night on,
Yep.
Wednesday night, and that's pretty powerful too.
Yeah, I think people, when they say the traveler prayer, especially when they've gone to Israel or they're going to Israel or they're going on some kind of journey that's a special journey, a spiritual journey, a dangerous journey, that they feel that they have to pray. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that tomorrow night. The Birkat Haderach, and it's pretty wild that we had this prayer. And again, that's back in the days when traveling was taking your life in your own hands, which sometimes is when we get on the freeway or get on our roads, you might feel that way, right? But there is a prayer for it, and some people put it in their cars. They put a little their Birkat Haderach in their Tfilat Haderach in their cars. You know, a blessing of traveling. So, yeah. All right, let's read one more psalm, or maybe we'll get two. I thought maybe we get to 73 today, but let's read 70 for sure. Rosemary, for the leader of David. Oh, by the way, this one says Lahaskir, which I don't know if we've had a Lahaskir yet, but the word Zachar, the root means like to remember, a psalm of remembrance. I don't know if it's connected again to something like a time of year or an event that that people would say Lahaskir, but I don't know. Does your commentary say anything, John, and yours for Lahaskir for the title? No. All right. Well, let's take a look at this, folks.
Hasten, O God, to save me, O Lord, to aid me. Let those who seek my life be frustrated and disgraced. Let those who wish me harm fall back in shame. Let those who say, aha, aha, turn back because of their frustration. But let all who seek you be glad and rejoice in you. Let those who are eager for your deliverance always say, extolled be God. But I am poor and needy. O God, hasten to me. You are my help and my rescuer. O Lord, do not delay.
That's it. So this one goes back to super short. This is 6 verses. Again,
Dallas,
yeah.
if you want to know, mine says
Yeah. Well, yeah, Glory, thanks. Yeah, what does
a
yours say?
petition.
A petition. Interesting.
Yes.
Lahaskir. Yeah, it wasn't the first time we saw it, but it's not a common one. Lahaskir. I thought maybe we had one or two that we saw that had Lahaskir, but and we have, you know, like I said, we've had other words, you know, a maskil. We've had some other terms for that. As I said, we really don't have the word Hallel. The word Hallel was actually in one of the Psalms we just read, but not at the beginning of it, not as a description. You know, this is definitely a psalm that people, you know, again, captures that idea that do I really do, you know, how do I get out of this, right?
Yes, it says, mine says an urgent prayer for God's help when threatened by enemies.
Yeah. Which again, that's kind of the theme of lots of them, especially like the ones we've been reading today. What's really pretty about this one, even though it's very short, this is not a phrase that we get a lot in the Psalms or in the prophets or in other poetic places where we see poetics. And Judith, since you read Hebrew pretty well, can you read that line 6? Read the first 2 words.
Va'ani ani.
Right. But you notice One place it's with the aleph, and the other place it's with an ayin. So ani means I, right? Oni or ani is poor, right? So look at that play on the word ani. Ani, ani. I am poor. And the other word, which clearly is connected as a synonym, evion. I am in need. I am poor and needy. So that's the Hebrew it's rhyme. It's a poem. It's not a rhyme. It's a homophone. Ani ani. I'm poor. So it's a play on the language. It's a play on the word, the way it sounds. So again, I don't know that it exists anywhere else in the Bible, a play on the words that are essentially, again, sounds exactly the same. And how do you know? Only by the context, or in this case, again, if you see it written out. So all right, so we have time. Let's read Psalm 71. Psalm 71. Again, not a lot of references to Psalm 70 in our prayers, in our elsewhere in our tefillot. I'm just going to see if just wanted to say that. Whoa, hold it. So as we get into the 70s, and again, the numbers don't have any special, even as I said, the breaks. We're still in book 2 of the Psalms. This is as we go into into the numbers of the 70s. Again, some of them are super short, and some of them are like we had with Psalm 69 and 67. These are fairly long Psalms, some of them, but let's take a look at Psalm 71. I think we should maybe we'll have time for this one, and maybe the next one we'll see, but this one's a little bit longer. So let's take a look at this one.
I seek refuge in you, O Lord. May I never be disappointed. As you are beneficent, save me and rescue me. Incline your ear to me and deliver me. Be a sheltering rock for me, to which I may always repair. Decree my deliverance, for you are my rock and my fortress. My God, rescue me from the hand of the wicked, from the grasp of the unjust and the lawless. For you are my hope, O Lord God, my trust from my youth. While yet unborn, I depended on you. In the womb of my mother, you were my support. I sing your praises always. I have become an example for many, since you are my mighty refuge. My mouth is full of praise to you, glorifying you all day long. Do not cast me off in old age. When my strength fails, do not forsake me. For my enemies talk against me. Those who wait for me are of one mind, saying, God has forsaken him. Chase him and catch him, for no one will save him. O God, be not far from me. My God, hasten to my aid. Let my accusers perish in frustration. Let those who seek my ruin be clothed in reproach and disgrace. As for me, I will hope always and add to the many praises of you. My mouth tells of your beneficence, of your deliverance all day long, though I know not how to tell it. I come with praise of your mighty acts, O Lord God. I celebrate your beneficence, yours alone. You have let me experience it, God, from my youth. Until now, I have proclaimed your wondrous deeds. And even in hoary old age, do not forsake me, God, until I proclaim your strength to the next generation, your mighty acts to all who are to come, your beneficence, high as the heavens, O God. You who have done great things, O God, who is your peer? You have made me undergo many troubles and misfortunes, will revive me again and raise me up from the depths of the earth. You will grant me much greatness. You will turn and comfort me. Then I will acclaim you to the music of the lyre for your faithfulness, O my God. I will sing a hymn to you with a harp, O Holy One of Israel. My lips shall be jubilant as I sing a hymn to you, my whole being, which you have redeemed. All day long my tongue shall recite your beneficent acts, how those who sought my ruin were frustrated and disgraced.
Yep. So this one actually talks about singing, right? This one actually says, I will play music for you. I will sing to you. I will play music on the harp, on the lyre, right? On the lyre first, the nevel, and then the chinor, the nevel, the chinor. Those are things that we oftentimes put together, right? And we have other psalms that will refer to instruments directly. So whether a Shoshanim or Shoshan was Shoshana was a lily shaped instrument, or whether some of these other words refer to instruments, the Ayelet Hashachar, the hind of the dawn, the deer of the dawn, whether that was an instrument too, we don't know. But we know that a nevel and a chinor are instruments. We know what those are. So we know that the Psalms, the book of Psalms refers to musical instruments. It does. Of course, the biggest one is Psalm 150, which lists almost every instrument that they had in those days. A psalm that goes through all the different ways of saying hallelujah, of singing, of praising God with all these instruments. And the nevel and chinor obviously are both mentioned there, the shofar, all the instruments that are mentioned in Psalm 150. And we'll listen to a few versions of Psalm 150. But what's so interesting about this psalm is that it very similar to the previous psalms, but it actually and again, I'm suffering for things that, I don't deserve.
This is about age.
You've made me go through these troubles and misfortune, God, but you'll take care of me. Yes. And there's definitely a sense here a few times, hoary old age, which is another fancy way of saying in my old age, as my hair gets white, right? Al tazveni, don't forsake me, right? Here it said it also here, the actual line that we say during the Shema Kolenu prayer, when we on high holidays, right? We say these words, Al tashlienu le'ed zikna, do not cast me off in my old age. Look in our machzor, right? It says this, Kichlot kochi al tazveni. We actually use this line in the Shema Kolenu prayer. Shema Kolenu, Adonai Eloheinu. And then we say, Al tashlichenu le'ed zikna. We actually say these words. So this is where it comes from. I mean, the prayer comes from here. It comes from here. So in the Shema Kolenu, we go through a whole list of things. It's not just this line, Al tashlichenu le'ed zikna. Don't cast me off in my old age. It goes through other things. Don't do this to me, God. But what's interesting about the context of it in the book of Psalms, it says, if you forsake me, God, right? Who's going to be able to talk about you, right? I'm going to be the one who's going to celebrate you, God. If you let me perish, I can't proclaim it. So, God, you better save me. Otherwise, you're not going to have anyone to tell everybody how great you are. Which again, as you've already pointed out, is very much like what Moses does, which is, God, think about what other people are going to say if you do this. So this understanding of like, God, we need to be here to sing your praises. We need to be here. You need to keep us alive so we can do this. There's definitely that sense that we have in Jewish history, even again, in our darkest days, maybe especially in our darkest days, I should say, where we say to God, God, don't let us perish, because who else is going to spread your name? Who else is going to talk about you, God? Again, if we're gone, you're gone. So it's an interesting idea that because we're God's partners in the world, we're reminding God that you got to keep your end of the bargain up. Otherwise, you're not going to have anybody but talk. No one will be able to talk about you. So, this is what this person will definitely do again when they've been redeemed. When I'm saved from the people who would otherwise destroy me. So that is pretty obvious here in this one. Again, this is not like the Psalms that we had in the 60s and late 60s, where we were talking about God's greatness and how wonderful God's power is and all of those kinds of things. We're kind of back to God help me in this moment, which again is why these Psalms, for some people, especially when they're in a critical moment, why they turn to this. So we've talked about the fact that there are people who are saying Psalms for their families who are being held hostage right now, and they are saying Psalms all day for them. There are other people who are saying Psalms for the hostages who've never met them, but they're saying Psalms for them all the time. It's something we can do. It's something that people, pray that, there'll be a miracle. So, what?
I just had to look it up.
Yeah.
The difference between versus
Beneficence.
beneficence versus benevolence.
Uh-huh.
I just thought that was interesting, the use of word.
So the translation, and John's pointing out the difference of beneficence versus benevolence. So the beneficence, the word that, it's not a great translation, by the way, John, because the word that they're translating, so they're saying God's doing mighty things, gvurot, or God's mighty acts, God's teshuatecha, God's deliverance, right? I'm going to tell about it. But the word that they're translating as beneficence is tzidkatecha, both times, which the root for that is really tzedek, right? Justice. So beneficence, they're basically saying God is doing the good thing, right? God is doing a good act. But one could also translate it as God is doing the right act. God is doing what's right. God is executing justice, right? I don't even think it's benevolence. I think it's simply, it's not God doing what's good. It's God doing what God should do. I did this, and God, you're supposed to respond with justice, right? You're supposed to balance this out. So if I do good stuff, you're supposed to balance it off with good stuff on your side. That's really what it's saying. It's not really saying God's goodness. Tzedek doesn't mean goodness. Tzedek means righteousness. It means it's goodness from the sense of doing good, doing tzedek, doing, but it's not God being good to you. It's doing good. It's doing the right thing more than doing a good thing. Doing what's right. That's what tzedek is, right? Tzedek is much more of a sense of corresponding punishment or reward. Sometimes it's justice, right? Sometimes it's literally justice, which justice sometimes is punishment.
But line 2 says, as you are beneficent, right?
Yeah.
You save me and rescue me. It's an obligatory.
Well, it's definitely good because it's paired with the word Yeshua or Teshuatecha, which is, again, Yeshua is salvation, saving, it's deliverance. So it's definitely good. We're not asking God to give us what we deserve, which is another way that we could say it. Because the assumption here is we're doing what's right, so you do what's right, God, right? Right? I do good stuff, right? And you do good stuff, right? I haven't done anything wrong, right? So there's a feeling that God needs to do the right thing. God, you do the right thing. It's not translated necessarily that way because, again, the implication is it's all going to be good. It's not that God's just going to do what's right, but God will do what's good.
But the way they translated it is that God obligated.
Oh, definitely should be. God definitely should be obligated. Yes, and that's what it should be Yes, and that's what it should be translated as, not that God is being beneficent. Like if I say the word beneficent, normally I'm thinking the words of beneficence or benevolence. I'm assuming that God is doing God is giving me is giving me a break, right? God's given me a something I didn't even necessarily deserve, right? Are you saying beneficence is I think beneficence means doing good for somebody.
Based on I had to look it up.
Is it?
Yes, benevolence is.
So what is the translation of what's the translation of beneficence?
The action of benevolence is the virtue of the client to act for the benefit of others. Beneficence can be obligatory.
Okay.
But it can also be.
It's related to benefit, so.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, I think of it as a benefit, which is something that you get in addition to what you're supposed to get. Like that's when I think of a benefit at work or whatever, you think of it as that's beyond what I'm getting for salary. I get a benefit. But yes, but according to the translation that John just read, beneficence also can be obligatory. And so like a mutual benefit society, when you use the word mutual benefit society, you're definitely understanding it is an act of doing, if it's mutual, that means you both do what you're supposed to do for the other person. You have an agreement and you do that. But I think there is definitely an understanding here in the Psalm of again, and I think this is what the word tzedek, because sometimes it does mean good, but usually it really just means righteous. Really, it just means doing what's right. And sometimes doing what's right is painful, right? So sometimes like doing what's right, that's what the rabbis kind of teach. When it says tzedek, tzedek, tirdof in the Torah, in the Torah portion that we read 2 weeks from now, tzedek, tzedek, tirdof is in Shoftim. When it says that, the rabbis interpret it, when it says tzedek, tzedek, when it says it twice, it's to teach us that sometimes justice is a punishment and sometimes justice is helping somebody, get on their feet. But sometimes it's dishing out the punishment. Sometimes it's the long arm of law, and sometimes it's the compassionate hug of somebody who is trying to take care of you with the law, making sure that you are protected by the law. Sometimes it's enforcing the law. And that's why the rabbis say it says tzedek twice. The repetition of tzedek there, they say it's not an accident. It needs to be on both sides, justice and merciful protection. So it's got to have both. You can't just do one. You can't just be executing judgment on people. You have to also be protecting people with the law. It's a good idea, by the way. Something to think about when we talk about the law in a modern day world. But anyways, that's the word tzedek, which we see a lot in the Torah. And sometimes you just got to look at the context, but this is definitely good stuff. God should give us good stuff, because otherwise, you wouldn't be being saved by it. Your deliverance is that tzedek. So, well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Again, tomorrow night we'll have a look at prayer, and specifically like what our prayers might look like in an ideal world. And then Friday we'll have Rick and Addie will be here for a live Shabbat, and we're working on doing a Shabbat. I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. We're working on doing a Shabbat with David and Ilana Zasloff, who did the Cuban Shabbat here years ago at Temple Beth Ami. They've moved out of town. They don't live here anymore, but we're going to do one. We're going to tape one where they live down south now in southern United States. And we're going to do a Cuban Shabbat for the tape version and get some of that good Cuban Jewish sound back to so you can dance to Shabbat. but yeah, we had a great, we had them come out a couple times, and it was really, really special. We had the Freemans, Ivis and Eric Freeman, because Ivis is Cuban. She wanted to have we put together a Cuban Shabbat, and we ended up doing it again. It was really, really special. Really great musicians. So that's one of the ones coming up. But we have, and Joe Buchanan, by the way, is working on a new album. So we're helping out with that too. So hopefully you'll hear some good songs that he's working on now, and some music that's been brewing in his mind. So we'll be sharing that off too. So hopefully some more good music. And next week we're going to listen to some versions of Psalms. We're going to listen to Psalm 73, a modern Christian rock version of Psalm 73, which I thought was an interesting one from a few years ago. So yeah, John, I'm always scouring Psalms that people write, and we're going to hear some interesting ones over the next. We're about halfway through the Psalms right now, so they're going to change though. We're going to see whole layers of Psalms that are very different coming up in the 90s and the 100s, etc. So thanks everybody, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye-bye. Thanks, Rosemary.